Welcome to your Cissia Early Access Guide, and I'm sure we're all excited to slither into this one, folks. Cissia has come with quite a few question marks to her performance and fit, especially off the back of some very relevant and strong units. So let's start to dive into her kit, her builds, teams, and more to see if the snake is worth her weight in egg-based food items. Let's start off with Cissia's kits with her signature ability called Venom. These little buggers do two things, but let's just first talk about the attack itself. Venom will be consumed to dish out the actual name of the attack called the Corrode Bone that deals DOT, aka damage over time, which is the form of damage that hasn't really been extrapolated outside of attribute anomalies like Burn and Shock. But here we have our Snake Tyrant applying Corrode Bone against enemies every 5 seconds. And for those who are wondering, this comes from the basic attack. But whilst performing Corrode Bone, you can gain 1 stack of crit rate. Each stack equates to 6%, lasting 15 seconds. And since you can theoretically trigger once every 5 seconds, this means that after 5 seconds of literally doing nothing, you should have at least a permanent 18% crit rate up for Cissia for the rest of the battle. Well, as long as you've got Venom. No, not that kind of Venom. Sorry. And that's just one of the 2 bonuses I mentioned earlier. See, when Venom is spewed, your enemies will get debuffed as well for 6% defense down on electric type damage. And this can go up to 25% with the core passive. The scaling of this passive will actually be coming from Cissia's energy regen, which will hold the magic number for later in the video when that really matters. So bear with me here, or snake with me here. That just doesn't have a really good ring to it. But before we move on, a few more notes on Venom and the corresponding Corrode Bone attack. First, the defense down bonus will last you 30 seconds past the moment you consume your last Venom. As long as you even have a Venom in your pouch, you'll have the defense down debuff. And secondly, if you were to overstack Venom, don't worry, the Venom will automatically trigger the instance of Corrode Bone for you. So you can only have 6 at a time, but don't need to worry too much about the overflow, as it'll just deal the damage for you. It's actually quite convenient. Next will be Cissia's other basic attack called the Serpent's Kiss. And no, this is not when Cissia jumps out of the screen to come kiss you. This lightning strike is quite similar to that of Yangi's old lightning strike animation, but is cool in that you can actually reposition if you hold down the basic. To get this attack, you must have a stack of Serpentine Shadow, which can be gained from obtaining 6 stacks of Venom at any point. Funny enough, even points that overflow from the bar can add to the total amount gained, which makes managing stacks a little less painful. But at tops, you can gain 3 stacks of Serpentine Shadow to hold. Now, for those who are keeping up here, Venom stacks don't just grow on trees. In fact, they are a constantly consuming resource. How on earth are you going to get your Venom stacks, you may ask? Well, let's head over to the rest of Cissia's kit, starting with her EX special called the Venomous Bite. Now, contrary to how squiggly Cissia is, this attack is quite lethal and provides you with a ton of Venom stacks. This attack actually starts off with only consuming 60 energy, yet you can actually hold down this ability to consume more stacks, 20 per stack to be precise. So with 120 energy in total reserve, you can go up to a max 6 stacks if you have a full energy bar. Yet, that's not all, folks, as many times you might not always have a full stick. This leads us automatically to the follow-up attack with the EX special, which allows you to shortcut to the 4th attack on the basic string of Tongue Flick if you just press the basic after the EX special. At the end of Cissia's 4th basic string, you can gain 2 extra stacks of Venom. So essentially, if you consider these 2 stacks, you'll only want to averagely consume 80 points of energy for the 3 plus 1, and then follow up with the 2 for the total 6 stacks that you'll need to generate 1 Serpent's Kiss. And if you didn't get all that, don't worry, I'm pretty sure Cissia doesn't even know how her own mechanics work. But let's go into other ways we can supplement Venom, like with the chains and ults. The Gang Operation Chain Attack will grant you 3 Venom upon use. The ultimate called Ophidiophobia, which is such a baller name by the way, the Fear of Snakes, will grant you 3 stacks of Venom as well as generate her own domain expansion called the Ether Veil Cold-Blooded. A new Ether Veil that grants 5% crit damage. A very small bonus, but still great for attackers who can utilize the extra little jolt of crit and gain from stage bonuses that require Veils to be present on the field. These two abilities will come in great use for Cissia to maintain her stacks of venom during stun window opportunities. We'll circle back to how all this comes together during the combat portion of the guide, but for now we've gone through almost everything you need to know about the kit, as Cissia actually is quite tame. Yet, the devil rears its head in the details of the core and other build metrics, so let's swing on by the build breakdown right now. By now, hopefully it's no secret that Cissia is actually quite the interesting character. And no, it's not because she probably has the lowest IQ of all the playable agents. Probably. Well, it's because she is going to be our very first attack character that genuinely scales with energy regen. Just recently, we had a rework with Bernice, scaling Anomaly Mastery with energy regen, which worked twofold to help her maintain more energy and also compensate for the missing Anomaly Mastery for your afterburns. Here, the energy regen allows Cissia to maintain high EX special usage and defense shred. So let's dig a bit deeper as to what Cissia's thresholds are so that you know exactly how to build her. With Cissia's core ability called Fatal Concoction, you'll be scaling your energy regen into defense ignore for electric-based damage. Starting with 6% as we mentioned, after your energy regen passes 1.4 for every 0.12 energy regen. So doing a quick arithmetic, you'll need 19 stacks of defense ignore. And backtracking that math, you'll be needing 3.68 energy regen to have your full 25 defense ignore. Whew, which sounds quite daunting, as without the signature engine, you might be asking how much of a DPS loss this is. Well, let's slither into that right now. Let's talk about the two different camps for Cissia wanters and havers, those who are going to pull for Cissia's engines and those who are not. This essentially is going to change your investment strategy, yet both, as you'll soon find out, are perfectly fine. Let's start off with the signature. The Serpentine Seeker is a 713 base attack and 60% energy regen W engine option that grants an additional 25% crit rate right off the rip. Then, when the user consumes at least 20 energy, you can gain a 3-second stack of a scalable 28% defense ignore when dishing out electric damage. This being able to add up to 30 seconds total. So let's say you're using the full 120, you can go up to 18 seconds from here, which when entering combat, you already start off with 10 seconds, making this convenient as long as you keep up the quick swap playstyle. But what's more important here is the chonky amount of energy regen, basically granting you a support-sized leveled energy regen bonus. This particular bonus, alongside a 6-slot ER and max core F, will push your energy regen well above to 3.7, which is over the 3.68 energy threshold for the max defense ignore bonus. Pretty sweet, as you'll be able to spam your EX specials, maintain a hefty amount of venom, and be able to light up your opponents with Serpent's Kiss. Then you have the have-nots, which in all honesty isn't bad. In order to compensate for the lack of ER, I swapped the preliminary build to a 2-piece ER instead of a crit damage piece, and ended up with 2.8 energy regen, leading to a 17% defense ignore debuff. So right off the bat, we can already see we have an 8% difference, which might seem pretty large, but the damage difference between said Brimstone and the signature, in theory, turns out to be a lot closer than we would have thought. And that's all thanks to the basics. See, remember how Corroded Bone and Serpent's Kiss are basic attacks? Those would be able to activate the Brimstone attack bonus and push towards the total 8 stacks of attack. And the more attack you have, the higher scale damage of Corroded Bone, as it's based on your attack. Thus, W engines like the Brimstone and those veterans who have been able to overclock to 5 have a really saucy budget option that hasn't been this relevant for a character even when Yeshin Guang was using it quite well. And apologies for going a bit out of order, but let me introduce to you the best alternative signature option, and it turns out to be the Cordis Germana. With its strong crit rate offering and amazing personal damage, the only thing you'll have to compensate for is the ER and, again, team-wide defense debuff, which should be no problemo. And I can't forget to share with you the best budget W engine option, the Drill Rig, that provides strong ER and a serviceable passive that boosts basic attacks. And snap, some actual use for the Drill Rig, since we all know Anton ain't being brought out from the box. And don't worry folks, here is a little chart with some other signature W engine options and other budget engine options for you to compare. Now for the drive discs, this is where things get a bit spicy, because I've only been mentioning builds based on her having a 6-slot drive disc ER. Well, most of your crafters have already snuffed this out, but if you have the signature, you might be in for a better treat. Oh. Dude, if you're gonna say the word, you have to spell it out. Folks, you'll be in for a TREAT. So for starters, the Dawn's Bloom is quite the appealing option for Cissia as it feeds again into the basic damage, which outside of the chains and ults during the stun windows, makes up a majority of her damage contribution through the Corrode Bone and Serpent's Kisses. Next is the 2-piece, and now the 2-piece generally will come down to if you have the signature or not. If you do have it, the world is your oyster, and you can run a plethora of options as long as the substats are strong enough, with a priority on crit rate, as Cissia's crit thresholds with signature is around 65%. Then attack and crit damage have a relatively even balance. Yet, I haven't mentioned the additional passive that grants an extra 50% crit damage. So, in all honesty, I give the slight edge to attack investments. And now for the main stats, and this is going to be very based on how deep you want to go with Cissia. Firstly, the budget build. In this build, I have her running the Brimstone with crit rate 4, electric 5, and DR in 6. In most non-sig builds, it's almost mandatory that you run ER 6. Yet, if you have some premium options like that of the Cordis Germina that provides a bunch of crit rate, I would actually prioritize attack main in the 4 slot, and crit rate and crit damage in subs. And just as a side note about slot 5 electric and attack are both viable, Pen loses out on a ton of value as the defense ignore does not stack with defense shred, aka Pen. Thus the ROI becomes less for said stat. Next is the most basic and conventional Cissia build with signature and ER6 slot. You'll have crit rate or crit damage in the 4 slot and 2-set bonus to counterbalance the stat distribution. Again, just trying to reach that 60 to 65% crit rate will be your goal. Like we mentioned, this build prioritizes the defense ignore and strong skill pushing with set threshold max of ER. And finally comes the big build. This is going to be focusing your investments strictly on offense. With the signature, you'll be rolling into a 2-piece ER and running attack 6 slot. This will increase your attack by a pretty wide margin, an average of 500 points, give or take, which can lead to an around 7 to 8% and even at most 15% damage increases on relevant attacks, leading towards a wide margin of damage if you can invest properly. The only reason I suggest this hyper-aggressive offense build versus just going straight for max ER is generally because advanced level players will know how to map out their skill usage such that you won't need more special attacks than necessary to dish out her optimal damage. And if you're running a hyper carry style of build, this option might be the best for you. But for generalist builders out there, go for the ER6 slot, and if you're a big baller, well, especially at the M2 plus level, you might want to consider going for attack 6 slot. And if you like more info on Cissia, look no further than our one-stop shop infographic guide that can help you detail how to care for your snake, Thyron. She can get quite hungry, so make sure that feeding your snake with the right substats, skill investments, and putting her in the right team environment will allow her to be one happy camper. So do yourself a favor and make sure to subscribe right here first, then head over to our Twitter and Discord for more of these helpful resources. And now that we've gotten a few of the build variations out of the way, it's now time for us to head over to the team showcases. Before this video, you guys were showing a lot of love on the Cissia Q&A post over on YouTube, and a majority of the questions were revolving around Cissia's viability, whether in a hyper comp or whether in the suggested team comp with Seed. Well, now it's time to dissect her team comp variations, and let's start with her 2 main team archetypes. First off, let's start with Mono Electric. These team variations are based on electric element units, namely Seed, Sambi, Trigger, with pivots of Haramasa and Yanagi, as not only are we trying to focus on maintaining Cissia's additional core passive restriction, which as a reminder requires a stun unit or electric unit, having an electric unit next to Cissia not only benefits her with extra bonuses, but brings a benefit to the whole entire team because of Cissia's core ability. Yes, when we're talking about Venom and the defense down effect from electric-based attacks, all the extra defense ignore actually can get utilized by the entire team, meaning more damage for Seed, who already needs an attacker paired with her anyways to activate the Vanguard buffs, Next is the classic hyper carry, and coverage of this team comp variation come highly requested by the community. So let's spend a bit more time here. Now, Cissia's output as an on-fielder is not bad. With a hyper carry comp, this usually entails the usage of a support and a stunner. Bring Qingyi and or Trigger into the mix, and don't forget the side of Dial In if you have the option. But what the two electric girlies can make use of with Cissia is, again, the 25% defense down, which adds their damage contributions and has surprised me more times than not in practice runs that Trigger can actually outperform because of the extra bonuses that also apply to her, comparatively when using Dial In, who sure synergizes well, but can't make use of the extra damage bonuses and debuffs Cissia brings to the table. Then comes the supports, and the options here are vast. Next, need more Ether Veils? Well, bring the Crying Baby. And need a quick swap? Why not try out the Singing Fish? And of course, if you're just wanting some bonuses, slot in the Jshoeas, Orpheuses, and Caesar Kings. On a budget, the Polkaras, Renas, and Nicoles of the world are also quite serviceable. But assuming you do have a few premium options lying around, Cissia is generalist enough to make use of most buffs throughout the game, with the sole exception of anything to do with sheer force. And finally, I did want to save some more wacky team options for the tail end of the team comp showcase, starting with what I coined the Angels core. This team consists of a core support tandem of Nongong and Suna, both of whom can utilize each other's affiliation to activate their bonuses and also help to buff and work with Cissia. And note that all three can create Ether Veils, so if any boss needs a domain expansion or two, this team will have that covered in spades. The next team revolves around Jshoea and any anomaly unit, with you pushing out Electric with Cissia, even though her base Electric application is not as strong as, say, a Yanagi, but with the help of the hard candy shots from Jshoea, you can actually start to push out quite a bit of Electric anomalies to allow for a third team member to say an Alice, Vivian, Grace, Miyabi, or even a potential Promea to make use of the anomaly on the board. Again, this team comp is quite off the beaten path, but a great alternative if you're not as attacker pilled and wind up having to find a snake in your metaphorical boots. Before we head into the boardroom to talk about investment strategy, let's quickly do a showcase of what a Cissia run could look like. Here, we're again using the core Seed, Trigger, Cissia, and this team just finds such a great groove. Just as good or even better than Norfi, which for a team that would have Sambi and Norfi on one side and now Cissia and Seed on another, for those who do have the Opal Squad teammates, this is quite the exciting news. Now, as I've been yapping, we're already closing to push to stun. One thing to note is that we're making sure that we're stockpiling at least 1 to 2 Serpent Shadow stacks. Those are, again, the stacks used for the Charge Attack Serpent's Kiss. Now, for this team comp, you'll be okay with spreading out the chain attacks, or if you're savvy and know that Seed is actually the larger damage contributor out of the two, you'll just run 2 chain attacks with Seed. Then go into ults and wrap up the stun window with a few extra EX specials and the last Serpent's Kisses you'll have in the back. What's great about Cissia is that her attacks are relatively lower in frame, and things like her chain and ult take up less time than most ultimates, thus leaving for a few extra milliseconds for you to squeeze in a few more attacks at the end of your stun. And then you're back to setting up for the next stun window again. Cissia is actually not that complicated, and as long as you're maintaining the Venom buff by using 2 EX specials, 1 Serpent's Kiss, and maybe even setting up the stun window with her ultimate, you'll be able to maximize your stun window potential and get out the most total team damage. As of current, I do not have one singular team rotation, as they can all vary based on the secondary offensive unit you bring with Cissia. And if you are running her as a hyper carry, well, then that line becomes a little bit more easier for you to manage, as you won't need to balance who is actually getting their lick in. And now it's time we hold our bi-monthly shareholders meeting for the snake and take a look at the Mindscape, because I was actually surprised with how effective one of her Mindscapes are, making it a breakpoint of investment for Cissia. The public security officer's first Mindscape, called Traveler in Prey, grants Cissia 6 Venom to kickstart the fight. This so happens to be quite strong, as with the signature, it already does allow her to rack up the defense down bonus and crit rate bonuses on Kuro Bone straight away. Then talking about the defense ignore, the core passive gains 40% in potency. That leads to a max 35% defense ignore. And why not just toss in an extra 5% electric res ignore for any electric based offense for all squad mates? And to put the icing on the cake, Corrode Bone gains an additional 10% electric res ignore. This melds both quality of life and a strong offensive bonus together, so we're already off to a solid start. Then comes in the M2, the Hunger and Hard Truths. Grants 3 extra venom for chains and ults, totaling them up to 6 venom stacks, which, as a reminder, is the number of stacks needed for a charge of Serpent's Kiss. Then the basic attack Serpent's Kiss gains 35% extra damage, and this turns out to be quite the diabolical one. As recall, I mentioned the hyper offensive build, where instead of going ER, we go attack. Well, this would all but ensure that we are not in need of that much energy going into the stun window, and can utilize the chains and ults to grant us all the stacks of venom we need. Just weave in a few chain cancels and boom, you have enough venom for at least 3 serpent strikes that stem from the stun window by itself, let alone the extra stacks you come in to set stun window with. Also, not only does this allow Cissia to be more offensive, but brings her viability as a hyper carry again to a much more sustainable spot. And with team comps that have dual attackers, it means that you want to give Cissia at least one of the chain attacks to allow her to spike up her venom to spew in bursts during the stun. Now, sliding down the river, we've got the M3 and M5, both granting extra skill levels, and the M4, which grants a whole new stock called Decidedness that can go up to 3 stacks after every EX special, chain, or ult, so that when you are stacked up all the way, and when you use Serpent's Kiss, all stacks will be consumed to launch an extra corroded bone that doesn't use venom. And let's head over to the M6, which is quite the interesting one, as we get an enhanced to the corrode bone called Bone Deep Corrosion. When triggering corrode bone, you can gain a stack of this Bone Deep Corrosion with an attack from any squad mate, which again is any attack except for a specific corroded bone. You can trigger a special corroded bone attack. So it essentially acts like an aftershock attack that's not aftershock, but just adds in a little chip damage here and there to ultimately rack up some pretty high scores. To wrap it up all in a nice neat bow, let's review my suggestions for Cissia. And unfortunately, my grade of her pull value doesn't really change here. I did label her as one of the weaker pull values out of the rest of the 2.x cast. Yet, if you are wanting the snake, even just picking up one copy and utilizing the amazing spread of alternative attack W engines will just be enough to get her rolling. But if you're a high roller and are able to purchase the limited edition puddings from the 141 convenience store, you'll probably have enough polys to take her to M2W1, which is a really strong breakpoint. And hey, even M4 is actually quite relevant too, more so than characters in previous banners. Then you should be relatively fine with any level of investment here. All that will conclude our case study into Squamata Serpentess. If you enjoyed our guide here, make sure to give us the good old thumbs up and subscribe, as it will be covering more Zizzy in the future. Come check out all the fun shenanigans we get up to even in our live streams, as we're about ready to get to pull for Cissia. And chat has forced me that if I lose my 50-50, I'm gonna have to eat balut, so that's gonna be a clip. But aside from that, we'll leave you to catch one of our latest videos. Click on any one of them over here, because YouTube is thinking that you might like them, and hey, didn't you build this algorithm brick by brick? So hey, yeah, click on one of these. We'll see you guys there. And it's your boy Josh. Thanks so much for watching.